education and passion for helping others learn supports her in serving for the past 5 years as Liverpool's homeschool library expert. With over 15 years of
will now be recorded.
With over 15 years of experience homeschooling her own children and as director of a community-based academic cooperative, Deanna gained an understanding of the needs of homeschooling families. More recently, she received her MLS from SUNY Buffalo in 2017 with a focus on the symbiotic relationship between homeschool families and public libraries. In her role as homeschool liaison librarian, she enjoys creating opportunities for library staff to connect with the homeschool community. And we're so glad to have her with us today. Thank you, Deanna.
Okay, thank you, Sue. And thank you everybody for joining today. It's wonderful to see so many people on our video presentation. So I just wanted to give you a little bit more about me. Like Sue said, I did homeschool my 3 children while working part-time in the library system. I've been in our Onondaga County Public Library system for over 20 years. And so I know the relationship between libraries and homeschoolers. I have 3 children. My older 2 have graduated and moved on and out of the house. And my baby is a senior in college this year, hoping to stay live on campus for the whole year, but we'll see how that goes. So he's currently doing that. The great thing about me going back to school when the kids got older was I was able to integrate my experience in the library with my experience in homeschooling. And so it allowed me to do some research and really apply things in my job and in my degree. So it was a wonderful match, and I'm going to share a little bit about that with you today. So let's move ahead and we'll show you what we're going to be doing. Just get my screen going here. Okay, so our goals for today will be to understand the homeschool community by looking at the research. And when I say community, I put that in quotes because homeschoolers are made up of individuals just like any group, and they're a very diverse group of people, but we're going to consider them as a community today as far as how libraries can service the homeschoolers. Okay, and we're going to also learn what motivates parents to homeschool. Why do they choose that educational path? We will develop a basic understanding of New York State education laws as far as they apply to homeschoolers. We will increase your knowledge of support groups and networks that homeschoolers belong to. And most importantly, we're going to discover ways libraries assist homeschool families. So I get this question a lot over the summer, actually. Isn't everyone homeschooling now? And in fact, even though education's happening at home quite a bit now, it's a little bit different than what traditional homeschooling is. And when I say traditional, I use quotes again because prior to this year, homeschooling was anything but traditional as far as educational standards go. So, but we're going to call it traditional homeschooling. Traditional homeschooling is an educational method in which parents choose to school their children at home instead of sending them to traditional public or private school. In homeschooling, parents voluntarily choose this form of education based on their own research that they've done before they make the decision. Hopefully they've done their research. Parents also get to choose the curricula that they use, which comes with answer keys and instruction guides, scope and sequence, so they know what their plan is for the entire year. They know what the plan is for the week, for the month, for the year, so they can see where they're going. And their curriculum is chosen based on the learning styles of their children. Parents determine the daily and yearly schedule that works best for their family. You may find some homeschooling families school year-round, but maybe take a break in between their semesters, whereas you have some that follow the more traditional school calendar. In hybrid schooling, although learning is taking place at home, the method, content, and scheduling is still determined by the school. So there's a definite difference, even though some are calling what was happening in the spring homeschooling because it was happening at home. It's very different from traditional homeschool as far as the control by the parents. So who are homeschoolers? What is their demographics? So we can kind of see this is based on a survey from 2016, which I have the link at the end of this PowerPoint, which you will receive. So currently in 2016, about 3 to 4% of school-aged population is homeschooled. So, and that has increased quite a bit in the past 20 years or so. So it's definitely a growing form of education. About 84% English is the primary language. 21% of homeschool families have a below a poverty income level. And that is one reason they love the libraries, so they can get some free materials. Currently, 68% white, 25% Black or Hispanic. Actually, the homeschooling Black community is probably the most rapidly growing community of homeschoolers. So I wouldn't be surprised if that number is actually larger in today's standards. Again, each family is unique in their motivation to homeschool as well as their instructional style. So think of homeschooling as a spectrum. And so on one end of the spectrum, you have what they call unschooling, where it is child-led, there's no specific curriculum, there's no textbooks. You kind of just focus on what the child wants to learn and help them learn at their own pace as far as they want to go. That's unschooling. So remember, that's at one end of the spectrum. Then at the other end of the spectrum, we have more traditional schooling that's taking place at home. So they may be using textbooks, more traditional type textbooks. They follow a more traditional school schedule. So everything like school, but just at home. So that is two ends of the spectrum. And then you have anything in between. So you may have people that like a literature approach. So they will be using books like biographies and nonfiction, historical fiction, and they're using a literature approach to teaching certain subjects. So that might be kind of in the middle. There's unit studies. There's just a wide variety of different ways to teach, and some work better for different families. So they choose a wide variety of instructional styles. One thing is true though, homeschool families love the library. Over 70% of homeschool families nationally surveyed have said that they use the library as a main resource in their education. So they do love libraries, and I can certainly vouch for that as a homeschooling parent. We loved to get resources from the library, and we love doing programs at the library. So they love you guys, and you're doing a great job. So what are the reasons? Why do people choose homeschooling instead of public school or private school? So here are the top 5 reasons. As you can see, the biggest one is concern over school environment, whether it's maybe their child has been bullied or they're concerned about bullying or safety. So school environment was the biggest motivator in this survey. 67% desire to provide moral instruction. 61% were dissatisfied with the academic instruction. 51% to provide religious instruction. And finally, the 5th reason listed was desire to provide a non-traditional approach to their child's education. So whether maybe, little Johnny has trouble being traditionally schooled and sitting still. So maybe they want to do something at home that's a bit more interactive. And I just added this one in here because now we have the global pandemic, which is probably a big motivator for this year for people that are choosing to homeschool. Whether it's just for 1 year, which we will talk about, or maybe they were like, oh, I was thinking about this, I'm going to try it out anyway. So one thing is good to know, and you may be getting this as questions as librarians, what is required? So I'm going to just give you like the quick overview of what's required. And then towards the end, I'm going to give you information where you can send people. And so you don't have to be an expert in this, but we're going to just give you a quick overview. So it starts with the parent sending the superintendent a letter of intent, which says, I plan to homeschool my children, given the names and the school year, for the school year. So this year that was due by August 1st, if that goes for people that are already homeschooling. But at any time in the school year, you can choose to, if you're in public school, you can choose to homeschool. If you do that, then the letter is due within 14 days of making that decision. So let's say you decide in November that the virtual schooling is not working for you and you want to choose to homeschool, then you can certainly do that. You just have to notify your superintendent within 14 days. After your district receives that letter of intent, they respond within 10 days by sending a response letter and some blank forms for filling out your educational plan, which is called the IHIP, and I'm going to go into that. So the IHIP stands for Individualized Home Instruction Plan, and this is where the parent is going to list out by subject what their plan of instruction is for the school year. So, you know, you'll be filling in either your curriculum that you're using or the topics that you're planning to study if they're not using a specific curriculum. Then the parent turns in quarterly reports, and they pick the quarterly report dates and they let the district know this is when we're going to turn them in. And then the district does keep track of that. And so you submit your quarterly reports, which is basically a summary of what you've been doing for the quarter, and you submit that into your school district. Year-end evaluations, typically what happens in your third quarterly report, you let your district know what type of year-end evaluation you'll be using. And for the younger students, that can be what we call a written narrative. So you can kind of write a summary of how the year is going, how your child is progressing. Remember, they've already seen the quarterly reports, so it's a bit of a summary. Maybe you could say what their weaknesses are or their strengths. So that's a written narrative. You always have the option to do a standardized test, and that would be a nationally normed test like the California Achievement or the Stanford Achievement Test. So parents can choose to test any year they want, or if their children are young and they don't want to test them, they can use the written narrative. Last year, when the New York State tests were put on hold and decided not to be given, they also put the testing requirement for homeschoolers on hold as well, but a lot of parents do that anyway. So, but they did make some exceptions for last year. Okay, so then there are a lot of supports out there for homeschoolers. So the tricky part you're going to find with homeschooling is because they are individual families. And sometimes they're trying to figure out, you know, what do I do? I've read this book on homeschooling. I want to try it. How do I connect with other homeschoolers? So these are going to be some good networks for you to be aware of. And again, at the end, I'm going to give you a place where you can go, and these will all be in one spot. But the most popular nationally known homeschool support group is called HSLDA, and that stands for Homeschool Legal Defense Association. And they are very good as far as being involved with legislation involving homeschooling. So they were very active with New York State to get the regulations that we currently have now. They also have some wonderful helps in getting started. They have just, you can actually call them and talk to a person, which is a delight nowadays. So they're a wonderful support network that is national. And I'm going to just show you what their page looks like. So one thing I recommend, if when you go here, you can tell people about this nice getting started slot here. That's very helpful. They have some really good tips, learning your child's studying style, your teaching style. So this is a really great resource, the HSLDA. Let's see if we can get back to here. Gotta get my drawing tools. Oops.
I think it's just escape to exit the drawing tools.
Thank you. You're so helpful. Okay. It worked. Thank you, Jack. Okay. So the next homeschool group I'm going to talk about is one that is statewide. And this is called Homeschool New York, Loving Education at Home. So they were formerly just Loving Education at Home, or LEA, if you may have heard of that group. And so their website is actually still lea.org. And so this organization I also recommend, they have on here, okay, I'm going to try my drawing tools again. So down here, they have resources, which is very, very helpful. If you go here to the resources, they actually have a regulatory manual that homeschool families can download, which has examples of quarterly reports, examples of IHIPs, examples of letters of intent. It is a free resource, and it's a wonderful opportunity for people that are not sure what they're doing to see examples. So Homeschool New York, Loving Education at Home is a Christian organization. However, they welcome all faiths to use their resources and also belong to their local groups. So LEA, Homeschool New York, Loving Education at Home, also has local groups. So again, you're going to get this PDF, but I just put this up here so you can see that LEA is broken up by regions. And so you can actually contact your regional representative and say, hey, you know, I've seen you are the contact. We are the XYZ library. We'd love to be able to support homeschoolers. Are there any groups in our area that I could reach out to? And then they may be able to help you connect with those groups that are part of Homeschool New York. On the local level, there is a lot happening on the local level. So I know at YMCAs, museums, parks, there's a lot going on as far as programming for homeschoolers, and there's also cooperatives in your area. Sometimes it can be a little challenging to figure out all of these, but I'm going to give you some tips on how to do that. But there is a lot going out there. I know, like our local Museum of Science and Technology, they offer classes. Our art museum also offers classes. The parks, they give tours and they have nature walks, and so all sorts of things going on out there. Lots to see out in the world, and homeschoolers love to take advantage of those things. And also you have cooperatives. So as Sue mentioned, I was part of an academic cooperative and director of that for a while, and we had over 50 families in that cooperative, over 150 kids. So it was a very vibrant, exciting time, and we kind of came together and helped each other teach tough topics, and it was a good social network for my kids. So I just did a quick search, and again, you're going to receive this, so the links are active, and you can click on any of these, but there is a lot going on in your area. These are just mostly some Facebook groups. The Mohawk Valley, I didn't actually put the actual link down because it was pretty long, but again, you'll get this, it's an active link. So, and that was just based on a relatively quick search. Homeschoolers love their Facebook groups. There is one for all of New York State. I didn't put that one on here because I thought, oh, that's probably pretty overwhelming. But these are some more local groups, and I like that because they'll talk about field trips on there, or hey, you want to get together to help each other out. So there's some examples of some local groups. So as part of my graduate studies, I was able to do some research on homeschoolers and the libraries. And part of that, I did design like a survey, and we put that out to our Liverpool community and the greater Syracuse area. Mostly Liverpool patrons did answer the survey, but we had 78 families that responded. And I just wanted to share this with you because in all likelihood, this is very similar to what they would say at your library community as well. But we had people that use the library weekly or more than once a week. And as you can see, that is a big portion that visit the library at least weekly or more than once a week. And so they just, again, just want to reiterate, they love the library. And they love the library that's close to them, whether it's small or big, but they're also willing to travel. And so that's something we've learned. We try to get together with other libraries and share our resources. So maybe Liverpool offers things on Tuesday afternoons, but Onondaga Free may offer things on Thursday afternoons. So we try not to compete with each other. We try to share our resources, and that's been very helpful so that we're not competing. Here are some things that the homeschool families said they would be interested or very interested in. So I'm just going to kind of leave that up here, but you can see 95% were interested in curriculum materials that circulate. Science kits, science equipment were also super popular. And fiction and nonfiction books that are part of homeschool curriculums. So like I said, some people choose a literature approach to their homeschool, and so their catalog will have groups of books that they're going to be reading for the year. And so rather than buying several $100s worth of books, sometimes families can get those out of the library, and so they really appreciate that. And a lot of it may be books that you already have anyway. Other things they were interested in as far as activities go, you can see they were very interested in a community board down at the bottom there, 91%, just for some place where they can go and see what's happening in the homeschool community. STEAM instruction, that's one of our very popular things at our library. So they love to come and make a mess at our library, and so they don't have to do it at home. And our librarian that comes up with the STEAM activities is just wonderful. And actually this fall we are going to offer it outside on a very limited attendance. So, and I'll explain a little bit more about that as we get down to that point. Book clubs, also very popular, and this could also be done virtual. A book club, we've been doing some of those types of things over the summer. Modern library research techniques, which, you know, as a librarian just thrills me, because don't I want to show everybody all the wonderful resources that the library has? And so you can show them your research databases, your apps, how to search in the catalog and narrow a search. These are things that people don't always know. And so, but they would love to learn. And so if you can do classes on that, that's something they love. So library support for traditional homeschoolers comes in many different ways, but certainly circulating materials is something that is very popular, as we mentioned in the survey, science kits. And so you can see there's, oh my goodness, so many different science kits, especially for our young patrons. They love bugs, you know, so a magnifying lens and a little bug collector, the bedtime math books with some manipulatives, backyard nature kit. So I'm actually going to see if this will take us to this website, because again, we'll have the link on there, but this is put together by a library, and it is wonderful as far as ideas for all different kits and age groups. So if you're saying to myself, oh, I love that idea, but I don't know where to start, just click on this link and they're going to help you just get what you need. So that's a wonderful resource. Again, that's the Oak Park Library kit list. And so that's a wonderful resource. Other circulating things, curriculum. So I'm not going to click on this one, but this is a link that will take you to popular reviews of homeschool curriculum. There's so much out there. Don't even think that you want to try to get everything. My suggestion would be to share things within your system. So if I'm getting this popular math curriculum, then maybe a different library would get the science curriculum. So you can share your resources. And I have some tips coming up too for inexpensive ways to do that. And then the parenting how-tos for homeschooling. I recommend those in print, but also electronic. And so print curriculum for homeschooling, it doesn't always follow traditional publishers. A lot of them are self-published or just kind of uniquely published. So, but you can usually find them on Amazon or Rainbow Resource. And so I know our library has a purchase order system with Rainbow Resource. So we're able to purchase homeschool books through them. Overdrive has a lot of how-to books for parents. So they're a really great resource, especially now. I think they've ramped it up even more. Other things that homeschoolers can benefit from that circulate would be the Chromebooks with hotspots. So I know now, like, depending on the school district, some districts are able to give children that are enrolled in school Chromebooks and hotspots if they need them, but that's not an option for homeschoolers. So remember, there was quite a few that are on below poverty level, quite a few that are one-income families. So if your budget allows it, a Chromebook with a hotspot is something that is very helpful. And of course, all of these things, really, the kits, the Chromebooks, they benefit all of your patrons, not just homeschool patrons. So you'll get a lot of mileage out of these. Other traditional things that homeschoolers like are programs. And so story times for pre-K. I know a lot of libraries do story times for toddlers and pre-K, which is wonderful. And I remember when my 5-year-old was going to school, like all those wonderful story times stopped for his age, and it was so sad. He wanted to keep going. He loved going to the library for story times. So I'm going to say keep going through kindergarten, first grade. You could do a K1 story time. The kids love it, and just because they get school age doesn't mean they want to stop, especially if they're homeschooling. Book clubs. So book clubs, you can have a family book club. So you've got parents and siblings and maybe younger siblings. So you can have a book club that everybody reads on their own. Maybe you get together if you can. Someday we can get together in person, but if not, you can get together over Zoom and do activities related to that. So I highly recommend some great books that are above children's reading level, but they can read as a family. And don't we want to encourage parents to read to their children? So if we can make it fun and have them accountable, because we're going to meet by Zoom, then that's just a great way to come together. Also, book clubs for emerging readers with activities. Again, we're doing some of this virtual while the good weather lasts. And I remember I'm up near Syracuse, so I only had September and October to do that, maybe just the first half of October. So we're going to try to take advantage of a lawn that we have on the side yard and do things on the lawn, social distancing. And I'll explain that in a little bit. STEAM Club. So our STEAM Club, again, like I said, it's super popular. What we're doing for our social distancing, and I'll tell you now with our STEAM Club, is we are having families sign up as a family group. They each bring their own blanket, and so that's their home base. And so home base has to be more than 6 feet away from another home base. And so what we will do is our librarian is going to prepare kits with our STEAM activity. And so we will give each family at their home base a STEAM kit. And then she will do the instructions on how to use it. And so they're together, but still socially distant. So, and then whenever they're not on their home base, they do have to wear a mask. So we're trying that with our STEAM Club. We're trying that with our homeschool hangout that we have. So we're just going to try that as much as we can while the weather is good. Art instruction. One thing we had over the summer, virtually and in person in the fall, we had a local art instructor who gave lessons to the kids. And so we would provide the materials, or she would just list what they needed before they started. When we were doing it in person, she had a small fee associated with it. And so she supplied the materials. But when we were doing this virtually, she would just give a list of what they needed. And they would paint, Van Gogh's Starry Night. I mean, these are little kids and they're just so adorable. So it was really a lot of fun. Parent support is something that is super important for public libraries to offer if possible. So again, we talked about the library literacy, but also just making them aware of what you offer, and as far as programming goes, but also your resources, the databases and different things like that. The parent support, you can tap into your local homeschool network, and they can also help you get groups together for parents and maybe speak on a topic, say turning in your quarterly reports, so they can help you with that. Another wonderful thing about libraries for homeschoolers is it's seen as a safe gathering place, and really we are seen as the social network for a lot of families. That is their friend group. These are people they see every week or at monthly programs. And so parents are able to network while they're there. Hey, what's working for you? What's not working for you? Did you hear about this? So it's a wonderful family network, while the kids are usually doing things such as, we usually provide coloring or maybe some sort of craft that they can do. So they have a space where they can meet and support each other. Like I said, we're going to be trying this social distance version coming up in the fall. So we will still provide craft materials, but again, we'll have the home base that they're going to be using. So we'll see. Some tips for how to help your plan succeed when it comes to homeschoolers. Homeschoolers can be kind of a finicky group. Like I said, they're made up of all different types of families. So you can't judge your homeschool community on one family because there's lots of them out there and they're all different. But some general rules for helping you succeed. First step, make a connection with your local homeschoolers. You will see them in your library. You've probably seen them. They come in and check out a ton of books. So you have already maybe made a connection. Or they come in and they've got lots of kids. And so you could say, oh, by the way, are you homeschooling? And another way you could connect with homeschoolers, because now we're closed, so maybe you're not seeing them, is you could put up a survey on your social media or your website. And similar to the survey that we did, you know, we'd like to connect. What are some things you'd like to see? I'd be happy to share my survey with you. You have my email in the presentation that we're going to be sending out. Timing of programs. So traditionally, homeschoolers like their programs during the school day. It's not that they're trying to avoid public schoolers, but remember, they're coming to you for content, and so this is part of their school day, their social group, their learning STEAM, their book club. They're using this as part of their school day, and so they like it to be part of their day, simply because they are also busy. They're in sports, they are involved in community groups, and so they're busy in the evenings, you know, just like public schoolers are. And so traditionally, homeschooling programs work better during school hours. I do know I've had one of the librarians that used to work at our library before we kind of ramped up our homeschooling support would say to me, well, we tried providing programming for homeschoolers and they didn't come. But she didn't ask the homeschoolers when they would like to come or what type of programming it was. So try not to assume, but try to make a connection and work together, because remember, they love you. So how can you promote your programs? So you probably have your traditional library avenues, whether that's a print calendar or your website, your social media. Once you get involved in some of the local homeschool groups, like those Facebook groups, then you can post events into there. Like I said, they're big into Facebook and finding out things that way. And I will show you an example of our libraries in our system have been trying to get together one Facebook page that has different events at different libraries. So homeschoolers have one place to go for all their library events in Central New York. So work in progress, but we're getting there. And I'll show you that in a little bit. And so some of you are like, oh, this sounds great, but you know, I'm like the only librarian in my library and I don't even have a meeting space. I've been there, so I know what you're talking about and I feel your pain. But like I said, homeschoolers love libraries and they love their local libraries. So there is a way to make it happen. So even with limitations, you can use good condition donations to make a homeschool circulating curriculum collection. So you will definitely want to specify, though, it has to be good condition, recent editions. Otherwise, you'll get every kind of homeschool book that you just don't even want on your shelf. So, you know, you can be picky. That's okay, because you only want materials that are going to circulate and that people want. So donations, that's definitely the way we got started with our curriculum, and it didn't cost us anything. And then another thing you can do, if you recall, homeschoolers like that community board. So another thing you can do is request free catalogs from homeschool providers, and then just keep those as kind of a reference for homeschool and families. So not circulating catalogs, but they could just live in a certain location, and homeschoolers can look those over and see what's involved in the different curriculum providers. And we talked about the community board. So the community board can be a physical thing, but it also can be a virtual thing. And I'll show you an example of a kind of a virtual community board that Liverpool Library put together. But yeah, even if you're not open, there's still ways you can help homeschoolers connect with each other and with your library. And partnering with your local homeschool community is huge. So, I mean, I have the benefit of having some experience with homeschoolers, but maybe you don't. And so the thought of teaching, like bringing together parents for homeschooling 101 to help them with different homeschooling topics may be overwhelming to you, but I'm sure that there is people in your community that are willing to help other homeschoolers. And so you can say, hey, would you be willing to speak about how to prepare an IHIP or how to teach math to your kindergartner? You know, so you can definitely tap into local resources. So this year we may have a kind of a unique situation in which some parents are going to choose to homeschool just for the year, just till the dust settles and we can go back to life as we knew it, with our wonderful schools and all that goes with that. But you may have some that will be choosing to do the 1-year homeschooling just because maybe their child can't sit in front of a computer screen for a long period of time, or whatever their reason. Remember, there are multiple reasons. We want to support them with their traditional circulating materials and programs and space if we can, but we'll also want to make sure they have access to the Common Core standards so that they will have an easy transition back into school. And so we can always go to the Common Core Standards website and they list those. This is a really nice series, the Core Knowledge series. And this is something that you could easily get and circulate in your library or library system. And so that also touches on Common Core material and kind of a general overview of what each grade should be knowing. And so that's another good one that I recommend. And then coming this fall, some of the things that our library is planning to do that will support homeschoolers, maybe the hybrid schoolers, really just anybody, because it's going to be an interesting fall. And I think the October meeting will be kind of really great because we'll have a month under our belt to figure out what's going on. But some of the things that we're planning to do this fall is we're planning to have monthly activity kits. So over the summer, since we couldn't do our traditional summer reading, we gave out themed activity kits each week. So it would have things that, you know, masks the kids could make, a STEAM project, some educational type things based on the theme. And the kids really loved doing that. And then every week we would meet up. And so they would get to show off what they made and other creative things they did related to the theme. And it was really, we had people that came to every single one for 8 weeks. So, and the parents loved the kits. It was a lot of work for us, so we're not going to be doing it weekly, but we are thinking maybe, you know, fall themed. And so, and then we'll have a Zoom meetup to go with that. Again, it's nice accountability for the parents, and it's just a good chance for the kids to see each other and show and tell what they're doing. We're also planning to circulate more of the literacy kits. So whether it be, you know, science literacy, math literacy, we looked at that list previously. So we're planning to make some of those and circulate those. We feel like families are like, we can't do any more screen time. Give us things that are not screen time. And so that's why we're doing these physical kits, the activity kits and circulating STEAM kits and things like that. Another thing we're offering starting this fall is a school survival series for parents. And so that will be, I mean, it could be for homeschoolers, but we're kind of directing it more at the hybrid schooling. How to bring an element of fun into the school day, maybe just give them some tips on that would increase their confidence that they can come alongside their child and help them in what they're learning, as well as make things fun. So we're planning the school survival series for parents. So we're pretty excited about that. Our topic for September is going to be math is fun for real. So lots of good resources on how to make math fun, because honestly, when you're a little kid, it really is fun. Counting bugs, lining up your little cars and counting the wheels. There's just so many fun things that involve math, and we don't have to call it math. So get away from the worksheets and have fun with math. So we're excited about that. So putting this all together, so I am going to share this guide that the Liverpool Library has put together, because this can be a good place that you could direct people to go for resources that are thinking about homeschooling. Or you can make up something like this, copy whatever you want, use the links. As librarians, we love to share. So not saying you have to use this guide, but I just want to show you a couple of things that we did on this guide. So we did, as you can see on the side here, all right, I'm going to try to play this link and see if this works. This is like our virtual community board. And so really all I did was make a PowerPoint of, I put out into the groups, hey, is anybody part of a homeschool group? I'd love your contact information, what you provide, and a logo. And then so I literally put that together in a PowerPoint, and then we put it up here. Let's see if this works. And so it's just a little YouTube. Okay, so I'm not going to play the whole thing, although it's not very long. But as you can see, we just put that up there as part of our guide. And so homeschool families, like I said, when they're first starting, they're like, oh, where do I go? This is a good place for them to get some contact information. Of course, other things we put on there is our wonderful library catalog, because we have lots of resources in there. This particular link takes them to the digital catalog that has homeschooling already selected as a keyword. They can contact me if they need any information, which is kind of nice to know, hey, there's somebody friendly at the library that will answer questions if I have questions, or direct me to a place where I can find the answers. And then we just did a little book list of some homeschool books. And then on our second page, we list ways that homeschool families can get involved. And so on here are a few of our fall programs that I was telling you about that we're going to try socially distancing. Every month we do have a homeschooling 101 for parents, and that's been going on all summer long, and it's been really great. So just we have different topics, how to teach writing or how to fill out the IHIP, just different things that we have a short presentation on, but then we allow a big part of that time for parents just to interact with each other and ask questions and answer each other questions. And so we have different Facebook groups. So this is the one I was telling you about. I'm not going to click on this, but this is our homeschool events at CNY libraries. And so this has events that are taking place at lots of our Central New York libraries. Again, something to try to make it easier for homeschoolers to come in one place and get information, which is probably the biggest challenge for homeschooling, is there's so much out there. Where do you even begin? So this is a super important page. If you have anybody that's interested in homeschooling, they can come here. They can get kind of the brief synopsis that I gave you guys of what's involved, but then they can click on the homeschool regulations and go and read the regulations and learn the regulations. This was our link to the Homeschool Legal Defense Association that we talked about, that has a nice getting started and so many other resources on there. And then this is a link to the Homeschool New York Loving Education at Home that had that regulatory manual that people can download to get samples of the paperwork that they have to turn in. For my community, I also link them to my local school district's home instruction page. And so on that page, it does have sample blank forms that homeschool families can use. They're not required to use the district forms, but Liverpool does a great job at providing forms. So I usually recommend that they do use those. And then this was one of the homeschooling 101s we did, was how to do your New York State year-end evaluations. And so this just talks a bit more about that. And so that is our homeschooling guide that when we first closed down, I had time to make when the library was closed. And so now it is not closed, but I'm still trying to add to it. And so that kind of concludes the formal presentation, but I would love to help answer questions if anybody has questions. Thank you so much for listening to me.
Well, thank you. I especially like the blanket home base. That sounds like such a wonderful way to handle that issue during our pandemic with outdoor programming as we move into the fall. And you could use plastic tablecloths for pumpkins carving. So
yeah,
we could see. I've collected questions from the chat. So the first one, and this follows your presentation from the beginning sort of to the end, of course, is there any information about why homeschooling families are below the poverty level? Is it because one parent is in the workforce, or?
So I would be guessing that that is probably the main factor, because a lot of homeschooling families are one income families. And so they can be very thrifty. And so I would assume that that is why, but I don't have specific research to back that up. It's a great question, though.
Okay. There was a follow-up comment that it would be interesting to see if close to that 21% of all families that are below the poverty level, if that's close, if that information is close as to why people do homeschooling.
Yes, if you go to, I'm sorry, Sue, one of the links at the page that's at the end of my presentation that you will get, it has a link to the national survey, and there's a lot more detail in there, so it may actually answer it in that survey.
Okay, great. We'll look for that. Mm-hmm. Do homeschool families have access to textbooks and other materials used by their school systems? Do they have to share those?
So that is a great question, and the answer is really no. Basically, when you make the decision to homeschool, there's not a lot of support from the district, so you cannot participate in district sports. I do know a couple of families that have petitioned our district to participate in some of the clubs, the after-school clubs, like the robotics clubs, and they were able to do that, but they do not provide any curriculum.
Okay. And money-wise, do homeschool families get any financial support from the state or the school district? And does the school district's money because the student isn't in school, which sort of harkens to charter schools, but.
Yeah, so excellent question. So the district, I believe, does lose money because the child's not enrolled in the school district as far as instruction goes. And homeschool families, unfortunately, do not have any financial benefit to homeschooling. They don't have any tax write-offs. They don't have any, reimbursement of any of those things. So unfortunately, it can be an expensive adventure, which is why they love libraries so much, so you can homeschool on really a very minimal budget if you're borrowing library books, if you're making your own curriculum, or if you're buying a curriculum in a box, it can be very expensive. So it really just depends on which route you go.
Okay. What happens to the plans, the assessments, and those reports that the parents submit to the school district? And if their reports and instruction by the parents are inadequate, is there any intervention?
So yeah, so all of the paperwork goes to the superintendent, and they keep track of that. So according to New York State, those are the things that you have to turn in, and the school district will check that over and acknowledge that you are in compliance with what you're supposed to turn in. If you're not in compliance, so they don't actually approve your educational plan for like, oh, we don't like this textbook or that type of thing. They just approve that you have turned in and you do have a plan and that you're following your plan. So there's that. And then if for some reason the paperwork you turn in is not adequate, then they will send you a letter and let you know it's not in compliance with the New York State regulations, and you can resubmit a revised. So you would submit a revised IHIP, and then they, that usually does the trick.
So it's revised until you get it corrected.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay. And if you never get it corrected, then do they expel you from homeschool?
So you could lose your right to homeschool if you're not following the regulations. That's why it's really important that homeschoolers know their regulations and follow them, even if the school district isn't following them. Sometimes districts are not very good about responding and acknowledging that they've received your material, but I always suggest to homeschoolers, it doesn't matter. You do your part, what's written in the regulations anyway. But yeah, if you are not doing what's in compliance with the regulations, you could lose your right to homeschool.
Good to know. Okay.
Yeah.
Could you talk a little bit more about the cooperatives and how they function?
Sure. So there's a lot of different types of cooperatives out there. Some may be for social activities. They get together and they do field trips, or maybe they'll do crafts, or, just fun type of things. And then there's a lot of academic co-ops out there. And so they're getting together, and maybe, for example, in the one we were in, one of the moms was an aerospace engineer. So she liked science, and so she taught science, and had a good time doing that. Whereas I was more like, oh, I like math, so I'm going to teach geography, or there could be any gamut in between there. So a cooperative is usually that, where they come together and share their skills and encourage each other in their educational journey. But they can be all different types or sizes.
Okay. And do you know if LEA still requires participants in local groups to sign a statement of faith?
So if you are a leader of the group, you do have to sign that statement of faith. I think you can belong to LEA and not have to sign that. But if you're a leader of the group, I believe they still have you sign that. That's my understanding, but you could always ask the regional rep that question as well.
Okay. To the best of your knowledge, do the resources on these websites, especially local groups and Facebook pages, do they provide names of recommended tutors? Or some homeschool groups, parents will hire tutors or teachers to teach special subjects, especially in the high school years. Is there a source for finding out who those experts are?
So again, probably the best bet would be to ask in there. I know, like, once they get into high school, some people will actually do a dual credit and use OCC Onondaga Community College. So your local community college will quite often have some homeschoolers dual crediting for high school. But the local community groups would be a good place to go for local tutors. So I know, some people are like, I love math. I will help your child with math. So that would be, keeping in mind that a lot of times the curriculum the parent is using does have the answer key and the solutions manual. So, until you're in like overwhelmed, like in the physics zone, as far as what I was, but in the elementary ages, usually you can help your child with the materials that you've purchased, as far as, like I said, they have answer keys and instructions. But yeah, that's a good question.
Okay. Yeah. Are the library supported programs, or your library supported programs for the homeschooling group or others in the community, are they allowed to register as participants even if they're not homeschooled? Or is
Yes. So obviously as a public library, we really don't turn anybody away. So if there is, a public school student that's available at that time and could come to our homeschool program, they would be more than welcome.
Okay. Do you know of any grants that are available for libraries to build their homeschooling resources?
I am not sure. I would check possibly with HSLDA. They actually have a homeschool foundation that is a charitable arm. So I know they help families that need money financially to help homeschool. So if they're in that poverty, zone, they can get a grant through HSLDA's charitable arm. So yeah, that's a really good question as far as grants, but I would maybe start with them. And
Okay.
then then this time coming up, it may be more of a, maybe it'll be more available out there as well.
Okay. Who facilitates the homeschooling 101?
So we have
you had any luck getting a parent?
Yes, I've had lots of luck getting parents. So we have a local chapter here of the Homeschool New York, Loving Education at Home. So we've used some parents from there. I've used parents from, we have another group that's local that is more of a secular group. So I've used parents from there. But yeah, I usually find that it's pretty easy to get somebody to help out. They're very supportive people. They want to share what's worked for them. And so, yeah, if you can find out who they are, they're usually willing to help you out.
That's great. Thank you.
Yes.
Could you share the contents of one of your sample activity kits? And as a follow-up to that, how are you handling the quarantining of the kit contents?
Yeah, great question. So we tried to have our kits always packed a week in advance. So as far as like physical guidelines for quarantining, that's what we also do with our books. So we would have, let's say, one of our activity weeks was castles. And so we would have information on, different types of castles. We had a template of a shield, and so the kids could make their own family shield, and we gave like instructions on, red means warrior, the eagle means, so we had like, what it means, how those shields, came about. And so they would make their own family shield. And then we also had instructions in there on how to make a catapult, because that's kind of medieval. And so then they would make a catapult. And so when we got together on Zoom, they would show us, oh, look, here's my catapult working. And what did you try on your catapult? You did a marshmallow, you did a pom-pom, did you try a penny? So we had a catapult in there. We had word searches, we had coloring sheets. I think, like I said, we usually included some sort of math because, you know, they love making masks, the kids, and then they'd show up and they got their masks on and they're adorable. So those are the types of things that we would do. We would try to make it educational, but fun.
Okay. And sort of rounding out the whole pandemic question is the final question here. What is the process for returning to traditional school? And would the student need to test into their grade?
Yeah, that's a great question. So as far as returning in, so if you were completing a whole year with homeschool, that would be pretty easy. You could just register your child, you know, for the next school year. Your district may want to test you in, but if you have, I would suggest that homeschool families keep a portfolio of their schoolwork. You know, not every paper that their child has done, but definitely some of the main things or projects or writing, and keep that in a folder so you could show your district, here's what we did. Is this kind of, you know, in line with what you have done this year? And then in the upper grades, they may want to test them, you know, just to make sure that they're online as far as in their like science. Did they do biology when they were supposed to do biology? But for the younger grades, I would just suggest keeping a portfolio. And honestly, with this year, I mean, it's going to be like anything goes, I think, as far as we just hope everybody can learn as much as they possibly can, you know. So, but it's pretty easy to transition back in.
Great, thank you so much. I think that gives us a pretty great picture of homeschooling and understanding what's going on. Jack or Mary, did you have anything to add?
No, would we want to unmute everybody and just see if anyone has one or two last questions that they want to ask with their voice instead of the chat?
Shannon did just ask, do homeschool students have the options to take New York State exams?
So the New York State exams, like when you get into high school, if you want to take the Regents, you can certainly do that. I do know some families that do like to take the Regents. The New York State exams traditionally help rate the schools as far as how the school is doing. So usually homeschoolers don't take the New York State exams because they're on their own course of study, and so it might not always match up.
Okay.
To piggyback on that question.
Anyone else?
To piggyback on that question, can you hear me?
Yep.
I didn't go to school in New York State, so I know that there's a Regents degree. Is there a difference between the Regents degree and then the degree that a homeschooling student would get in terms of like competitive in the marketplace?
That is a really good question. So in New York State, students in public school get a Regents diploma, and homeschoolers in New York State, they can issue their own homeschool diploma, and they get a letter from the district stating that they were in compliance with the homeschool regulations for the time that they were homeschooling, and it's called a letter of compliance. And so that says, hey, they did everything that was in the regulations. And so when it comes to go to college in New York State, you can show that letter of compliance and your homeschool transcript that you make. As far as, unfortunately, once you leave New York State, Regents doesn't mean a whole lot to colleges because it's a high school degree. So a lot of colleges now are realizing that homeschoolers are very independent learners, and they have on their website, like, here's how you apply if you're a homeschooler, because they're seeking out some homeschool students. So, but yeah, so basically, if you're in New York State and you want to go to a SUNY school, then you would use a letter of compliance and your degree. Obviously, you're going to take the SATs and that type of thing, but getting into college as a homeschooler with those things is very doable.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Anybody else? Well, I really thank you all. I hope
I
that
think
you,
that's,
yeah, I hope you've come away like just understanding the homeschool community a little bit more and maybe being encouraged that, remember, if you go away with nothing, remember they love you, okay? So they love you, and just reach out to them and work with them. And it is a symbiotic relationship. They're going to help your numbers. They're going to help your circulation. They're going to help your program numbers. But at the same time, you're helping them with a critical element of their life, educating their children. So it's really a win-win for everybody.
thank you so much, Deanna. This has just been so informative and a great baseline for starting our school year in this area. They're lucky to have you in Central New York.
Yeah.
So thank you for sharing all of your knowledge with us. I think
Great.
we're feeling a little bit more up to speed here.
Good. All righty. Thank you, everybody.
Okay, bye.
Thank
Thanks
you.
for coming, everybody.
We'll look for you next week at 10.
All right, Sue, should I send you the PDF of the presentation, or does Jack want it? Who wants it? You?
You can
Okay.
send it to any of us or all of us.
Okay, I'll do that. I'll just
We'll-
send it out.
We'll share it.
Great.